If you're an ugly man, then you probably already know that. Living life as a sub 5 male, meaning you rate lower than 5 out of 10 on the classic 1 to 10 look scale, it's a brutal experience. And your experiences throughout life will make it clear to you where you stand. But if you're really not sure if you're ugly or not, or maybe you're just curious about the types of experiences that sub 5 men go through in their lives, then this video is for you. I'm going to be going over 8 different experiences that all ugly sub 5 men have had, and just for fun, I'm going to make a tier list out of it. So experiences listed in the S tier are things where if this has happened to you, or if it's something that happens to you on a regular basis, then you're definitely sub 5. Okay, you're ugly. But experiences in the D tier, these are things that might signify that you're sub 5, but that might not always be the case. So let's go. If you go out to a public place with lots of people around and you never catch anybody looking at you, it's probably because you're ugly. And this might be something you notice in your workplace or at any kind of group meetup you might go to. If it seems like people just never really look at you, especially if people don't even look at you when you're talking to them, then yeah, that is a pretty clear sign that you are highly unattractive, or sub 5, as we like to say. Now, I would say nobody looking at you is a very clear sign that you are sub 5, but it's also one of those things where if you've been sub 5 for your entire life, then you might not even notice it. I definitely notice that in my personal life, these days people really just don't look at me, but I also have the experience of being, I don't know, like I was kind of attractive back in the day when I was a teenager, so it's easy for me to see this happening because I can remember a time in my life when random people did look at me sometimes. And I'm not saying that people would stare at me, but just like if I was walking around the mall or something, sometimes people I'd walk past would look at me for a second. Like they might glance up at me real quick. Because that's a normal thing to do. Even average looking people get glanced at. That's normal. And it doesn't mean they're checking you out or anything like that either. It actually takes effort to not glance at someone that's walking past you. It's just something people do. It's part of being aware of your surroundings. So if you literally never notice anybody looking at you or glancing in your direction at all as you walk past, then it probably is because you are an ugly person. You're so ugly that people are putting forth effort to avoid looking at you. And like I say, I don't actually know if this is something I would notice if I hadn't had the experience of having been somewhat good looking in the past, but it is really obvious to me now. People just really don't want to make eye contact with me, and they don't want to even look in my direction. So I'm putting this one in the A tier because it is a clear sign that you are a sub 5 male, but it's probably not something you'd notice if you've always been ugly. Okay, so let's talk about customer service workers, like waiters, waitresses, cashiers, salespeople at department stores, whatever. Customer service. You know what it is. Customer service workers are paid to be nice to you. It's their job. So if you frequently have the experience of customer service workers not being friendly toward you, then it might be because you're ugly. Especially if you notice workers that make most of their money from tips, such as servers, are being rude to you, or even just not being overtly friendly, then you are probably ugly. It's actually a known thing that a lot of guys will mistakenly think that a waitress is interested in them just because she'll be acting super nice and bubbly, and maybe she'll even be flirting or seem like she's flirting, But waitresses act like that because they're trying to make money. They know that they'll get better tips if they make the customer feel special. So they do what they gotta do to try to make as much money as possible. So if a tipped employee, like a waitress, isn't being nice to you, then what that means is she's weighed out the options in her head and she has made the conscious decision that she is willing to make less money rather than take the risk of having you or anyone else thinking that she likes you. And there can be some false positives with this. Anybody could be having a bad day, or, you might just happen to come across a customer service worker that's planning to quit and they're actively trying to sabotage the business out of spite. So there can be some weird one-off cases like that. But if you consistently have the experience of customer service workers being rude or dismissive or just not being nice to you, then that is a sign. It's a pretty clear sign. And again, to be clear, I'm not just talking about customer service workers being outright rude to you, but even if they just aren't being overtly friendly, that's probably a sign. A few months ago, or I don't know, maybe it was more like a year ago, I took my bicycle to a local bike shop for a tune-up. And when I went to pick it back up, when I was checking out at the counter, and by the way, just for a little more context, I was in a pretty good mood that day, and the first guy that I had been dealing with at the bike shop was being very friendly, so that kind of put me in a even better mood. So I was kind of in a rare mood where I actually felt a bit more confident than usual. So when I went to the counter to pay, the girl at the counter just, for some reason, it just felt like she was going out of her way to make sure I knew that I did not have a chance with her. And I didn't say or do anything that should have given her the impression that I was trying to hit on her or that I had any intention of hitting on her, because I didn't. I was just acting completely normal. And I think what it was because I was in a pretty good mood that day, when I approached the counter, I actually gave a pretty confident sounding, "Hey, how are you doing today?" And she was probably a 6 out of 10, by the way, average face, but she wasn't fat, so that's an automatic 6 minimum. But either way, after I said in my friendliest voice, "Hey, how are you doing today?" she didn't even answer the question. She just kept looking at the computer on the counter, and she kind of pursed her lips in a way like as if to acknowledge that she did hear me, but she didn't say hello or anything. And then after a couple seconds, she was just like, "Okay, that'll be $85.35, or whatever the price was." But she still didn't look at me. The whole time, she never looked at me at all. And the whole time I was running my credit card and everything, and when she gave me the receipt, she just never looked at me. And she also did not say thank you when the transaction was completed. But I did, because I always say thank you. It's pretty much ingrained in my brain. When I finish up with a transaction, no matter where it is, fast food, fancy restaurant, any store, whatever, I always say thank you. I mean, that's basic manners. It's automatic to me. So we finished the transaction. I told her thank you. So I think actually I even said, "Thank you, have a nice day," or something along those lines. And this is the part that lets me know 100% without a doubt that she thinks I'm ugly. After I said thank you, she didn't say anything back. And she just, again, pursed her lips in a way to, kind of do the bare minimum to acknowledge that she did hear me. And she just kept looking at the computer screen. So yeah, she did the bare minimum of what she had to do in order to signal to me, the customer, that she did hear what I said, and she probably only did that to avoid having me repeat myself. Because if she didn't do the lip pursing thing, then I might have just thought she didn't hear me, so I might have repeated what I said. But it's like she was just trying to get out of the situation as quickly as possible while making damn sure I understood the fact that I could never get with her. And again, by the way, I had no intentions whatsoever of hitting on this girl. None. And here's the thing, I did not even think about her later that night or the night after that when I cranked one out in the shower. And listen, I don't go out much. So usually when I do go out anywhere and I see even like a 5 out of 10, a 5.5 out of 10, I usually will imagine myself with her later on in the shower. Just because, I don't care. Look, you do it too. Whatever. Don't lie. You do it too. But that's just goes to show how much I truly was not trying to hit on this girl. But she wanted to make sure that I know my place. But anyways, sorry for the lengthy anecdote, but yeah, that shit happens to me all the time, and it's brutal. What else can you say? It's brutal. So if customer service workers are not nice to you, that is an S tier sign that you are sub 5. This next one might not be as obvious as some of the other entries on this list, but if you struggle to maintain friendships with other guys, then it could be a sign that you are sub 5. I think a lot of people just have the impression that looks don't really matter when it comes to same-sex platonic friendships, but they do. If you are truly unattractive, most men will not want to be friends with you. And in some cases, they might kinda sorta be friends with you, but you might notice they're always trying to take advantage of you, or they just always use you as the butt of the joke. And just in general, they won't show you the level of respect that you would expect a friend to show you. And there's two main reasons why this is. One is the halo effect, or the inverse halo effect, sometimes referred to as the phalo effect. And it's kind of just a subconscious thing where if you're unattractive, people do not treat you well and they don't want to be around you. And the second reason men won't want to be friends with you if you're ugly is because they don't want women to see you together and have you bring down the collective sexual market value of the group. So basically, if you are sufficiently ugly, even other men won't want to be around you because they think you make them look bad. But with that said, there are a lot of ugly guys out there that probably would be willing to be friends with other ugly guys. And if a guy is just like undeniably Giga Chad level attractive, then he might not worry about having an ugly friend too much. He might not worry about an ugly friend making him look bad because he's too good looking for it to matter. So if you struggle with male friendship, that can be a sign that you are an ugly sub 5 male, but not always. So I'm going to put this one in the C tier. Okay, so let's talk about baby theory, which is basically just the idea that if random babies never look at you or smile at you, then you're probably ugly. Because babies are human beings and they have human instinct, but they have not been indoctrinated yet by society and learned all the rules of, how to be polite and how to not offend people and everything like that. So babies are running off of pure instinct. So if you are attractive, then random babies will stare at you and they will smile at you. But if you are ugly, then babies won't look at you, or they won't want to look at you, and they might even be scared of you because their instincts might be signaling to them that your fat sub 5 face is that of a predator. And this works with kids to some extent too. If you're truly unattractive, then kids will let you know. They might literally recoil in fear when they see you, or they might just call you ugly to your face. But honestly, I think babies are more honest than older kids because even by the age of like 3 or 4, most kids have had some amount of social conditioning, so they aren't just pure instinct like a baby is. I think baby theory is a great way to find out whether or not you're sub 5, but it can give you some false positives, especially if you are so ugly that you're literally facially deformed, because in that case, a baby might just be staring at you because they don't even know what the hell they're looking at. So if babies never stare at you and they never smile at you, and if children just straight up tell you that you're ugly, then you're probably ugly. A tier. If you are a single man and you are attractive, then people will ask you why you're single. Even if you're just average looking, the whole thing about people asking you, "Oh, why are you single?" It's just a basic conversation piece for the middle-aged demographic, especially middle-aged women, and older women too. Older women ask, "Why are you single?" in the same way that dudes will ask you if you saw the game last night. It's just a standard way of making small talk. So if you never get asked why you're single, especially if you work in an office environment around lots of women, if nobody ever asks you why you're single, that means you're ugly as shit. Because middle-aged and older women, see, they just really do not understand how the dating market is for average-looking men in this day and age. So unless you're truly just physically repulsive, older women will assume that if you are single, then it is by choice. And they will ask you about it because they are curious. And because they need something to talk about to occupy their time, since their actual daily workload usually consists of sending like 2 emails, maybe calling a catering company or something. So think about this right now. Can you recall a time in your recent past when somebody asked you why you are single? If the answer is no, then there is a good chance that you are sub 5. Because that probably means that you are so ugly that even the most out of touch old women in your office think that you are too ugly to find a girlfriend. I'm putting this one in the B tier because it is a clear sign that you're sub 5, but it doesn't work in reverse. Like, if you do get asked why you're single sometimes, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not sub 5. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are attractive. So this only works one way. But yeah, it's in the B tier. Okay, so this one seems kind of specific, but I think most guys probably have, at some point in their life, been in a situation where this could happen. So what I'm talking about is when you're at a party or some kind of gathering and it's wrapping up, so everybody's leaving, and there's a woman that hugs everybody goodbye, except for you. Now, this, I think, is a pretty clear sign that you're ugly, although I do think you might get some false positives in some situations, especially if you're giving some off-putting body language. But let me give you an anecdote, just so you all know exactly what I'm talking about, because this is something that has happened to me on multiple occasions. Okay, so this was back in college. I took a class which was basically like a senior design project. So I was with the same group of 6 people, 7 if you include me, for 2 semesters. So it was a year-long project working with the same small group of people. Well, at the end of the year, we had a big thing where all of the groups presented their projects, and it was a whole thing. Like, we had people from industry come to watch, and I think the provost, I think it's called. I don't know exactly what a provost is, but it's some kind of high up person in the university administration. But yeah, the provost was there. Okay, so it was a big year-long project, very stressful day. We had to give our presentations in front of dozens of people, not just our classmates, but a bunch of other people too. And then after the presentations were done, we had a little party. And they brought in alcohol too, so it was a legit party. But anyways, so there was this one girl in the group, a fairly attractive Asian girl. And throughout the year we had been working together, I would say she was nice to me overall, or at least she was never outright mean to me. So I didn't have any negative perceptions about her, and I figured that she felt the same towards me. But after we finished up our presentations, before the party started, this girl, she had to leave early. So she was saying her goodbyes to everybody in the group, and everybody was in high spirits. Our presentation went pretty well, and everybody was feeling good. And so this girl is telling everybody bye. And keep in mind, we all kind of had the understanding that none of us are probably ever going to see each other ever again. So she's going around and giving each and every person a hug as she's saying her goodbyes. And then I'm the last person. Okay, so I watched this girl hug 6 people right before me. These were male and female people in the group. And then she comes to me and she's just like, okay, nice working with you. Good luck, blah, blah, blah. Then she reached out her right hand and we shook hands. And then she left. I've thought about this interaction a lot over the years because it was actually pretty embarrassing because the other people in the group, they all saw this happen. And it was like, it wasn't even like she intended it as some sort of slight. She wasn't trying to offend me. I think she just did not want to hug me because I'm ugly. That's the only thing that makes any sense. And like I said, this was a cutie pie Asian girl, so JBW, just be white, didn't really prove to be true in this case. But anyways, the thing is, honestly, I hold no ill will against her. I don't think she meant it maliciously, and I've still cranked it out to her a few times over the years, so my overall impression of her hasn't changed. But that was actually one of the first moments where it really sank in, like, oh, okay, I am an ugly man. And yeah, like I say, this is something that's happened to me a few times actually, but the story I just told, that's just the most memorable time that it happened to me. So when a girl hugs everybody at the party except for you, that's how you know you're sub 5 and you're ugly. S tier. If you've ever tried jester maxing, you try to be the funny guy, but nobody ever laughs at any of your jokes, then that could be because you're ugly. In general, it is true that people will naturally perceive you as being more humorous if you are attractive, but it's also a very context-dependent thing. Everybody knows a funny fat guy, and you can just look at professional comedians. A lot of them are traditionally attractive, or at least average looking, but there is a lot of sub 5 comedians out there. Look at Stavros Halkias. You can argue that his whole career is built off the backs of his more talented friends, but, he probably wouldn't be as successful as he is if nobody thought he was funny. And I think we can all agree that he is sub 5. So, if you are actually a really funny guy, then you can probably get some people to laugh at your jokes, even if you're ugly. But if you're just like medium funny and you're ugly, then you're probably not going to get a lot of laughs. So if you are successful in making people laugh, that does not necessarily mean that you are not sub 5, although it could be an indicator. But if you always fail to make people laugh, that usually is a sign that you're ugly. Because people will laugh at an attractive man's jokes, even if they aren't funny at all. So, nobody laughing at your jokes, I'm putting it in the D tier because it is a very context-dependent thing. And in order to use this as an accurate indicator of how ugly you are, you would have to be able to accurately assess how funny you are But that's just not something that most people can do. Everybody thinks they're hilarious, even if in reality they're not. So, yeah, this one's in the D tier. All right, so if you try asking a woman out and she not only rejects you, but she actually gets offended, then you might be sub 5. Generally speaking, if a somewhat attractive man asks a woman out and she rejects him, she'll usually at least be nice about it. Most women do try to be friendly for the most part, and they'll usually try to let a guy down easy. Unless that guy is so ugly that she's offended that he would even think he might have a chance with her. But unfortunately, I actually don't think that this is a reliable indicator of sub 5 status because women's egos these days are so inflated. I wouldn't be surprised to see a below average looking woman getting offended at being asked out by an above average looking man. That's something that probably happens thousands of times every day all across the world. Now, of course, most of the time an average or good looking man asks a woman out, she probably won't get offended and she won't act offended, even if she is offended. So if you actually approach women consistently and they consistently get offended at your advances, then yes, you are probably very ugly. And you probably didn't really need me to tell you that. That is kind of obvious. But the thing is, how many men out there actually have the fortitude to keep approaching women when they keep getting berated like that? Not many. And I wouldn't expect anybody to put up with that. So realistically, this isn't a very good way to figure out if you're sub 5 or not, because it's just not a realistic thing to be doing, approaching lots of women when you're getting rejected brutally every time. So women getting offended when you ask them out, that's going in the C tier.